The coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago, but Dr. Lisa Martinez did not care. She sat in front of her computer screen on the human research ship New Horizon, staring at numbers that made no sense. The deep space scanners had picked up something strange at the edge of the Kepler system, and the readings were unlike anything she had seen before. Lisa rubbed her tired eyes and checked the data again. The energy signatures were massive, bigger than anything the human fleet had ever recorded. But that was not the strangest part. The energy patterns looked alive somehow, pulsing in rhythms that reminded her of a heartbeat. She called across the lab to her assistant. "Danny, come look at this. Tell me what you think these readings mean." Danny Kim left his workstation and walked over to Lisa's computer. He was the ship's communications officer, but he had a good eye for unusual patterns. Danny looked at the screen for a long moment, then frowned. "These look like biological signatures to me," Danny said slowly. "But the scale is impossible. Nothing alive could be that big." "That's what I thought too," Lisa replied. "But run the analysis again. Look at the movement patterns." Danny pulled up the tracking data on a second screen. The objects were moving through space in a coordinated formation, like a group of animals hunting together. Their speed was steady and purposeful, heading directly toward the inhabited star systems along the main trade routes. "We need to tell the captain," Danny said quietly. Captain Jake Sullivan was on the bridge reviewing supply reports when Lisa and Danny arrived. Jake was a practical man who had spent 20 years in space, first as a merchant trader and then as a military officer. He did not panic easily, but he could tell from their faces that something was very wrong. "Show me what you found," Jake said simply. Lisa connected her tablet to the main display screen. The bridge crew gathered around as the sensor data appeared in front of them. Lieutenant Sam Parker, the ship's tactical officer, whistled softly when he saw the size of the energy readings. "Captain, these objects are enormous," Sam said. "Each one is roughly the size of a small moon, and there are dozens of them moving in formation." Jake studied the data carefully. "What's their destination?" Lisa highlighted the trajectory on the star chart. "They're heading straight for the Zephyrian colonies. At current speed, they'll reach the system in 6 days. The Zephyrian Republic was home to over 12 billion people spread across 15 planets. It was one of the largest alien civilizations in known space, and had been trading with humanity for almost 50 years. Could they be ships?" Jake asked. "Some kind of new Zephyrian technology we haven't seen before?" "No, sir," Lisa shook her head. "I've been studying these readings for hours. The energy patterns are completely organic. These aren't constructed vessels, they're living creatures." Sam pulled up the tactical analysis on his screen. "Captain, based on their size and the energy they're giving off, these things would need massive amounts of food to survive. I mean, we're talking about creatures that could consume entire ecosystems just to meet their basic energy needs." The implications hit everyone on the bridge at the same time. Jake was quiet for a long moment, then turned to Danny. "Open a priority channel to Zephyrian Command. Send them everything we have on these contacts. Tell them to evacuate their outer colonies immediately." Danny's fingers flew over his communications console. "Channel open, sir." "This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the Earth vessel New Horizon," Jake spoke clearly into the microphone. "We have detected a large formation of unknown biological entities heading directly for your star system. The objects appear to be massive living creatures of unknown intent. We strongly recommend immediate evacuation of all civilian populations." The response from the Zephyrian military came back within minutes. The alien voice on the speaker sounded annoyed rather than concerned. "Human vessel New Horizon. This is Admiral Korth of the Zephyrian Defense Force. Our sensors show no unusual activity in the sectors you mentioned. We believe your equipment may be malfunctioning. Please update your navigation charts and avoid entering restricted military zones." Jake looked at his crew in disbelief. "Send them our complete sensor logs." "All of them." "Already transmitted, sir," Danny replied. "They're not taking us seriously." Lisa stepped forward. "Captain, we need to contact the other alien governments too. The Crystalline Empire, the Aquatic Federation, the Insectoid Collective. If these creatures are heading for populated systems, everyone needs to know." "Do it," Jake ordered. "Send the same warning to all major governments. Include our complete analysis of the biological signatures." Over the next few hours, the New Horizon transmitted warnings to every alien civilization in their communication range. Lisa worked frantically to compile more data about the approaching creatures. She analyzed their movement patterns, energy consumption rates, and biological markers. The more she learned, the more frightened she became. These were not random space animals looking for food. They moved with purpose and intelligence, following the busiest trade routes where they would find the most populated systems. "Captain," Lisa said during the evening briefing, "I think these creatures are predators. Not just any predators, but ones that specialize in hunting entire civilizations." She brought up a holographic display showing the galaxy from above. "Look at this pattern. There are dozens of star systems along the outer rim that show signs of having once supported life, but are now completely empty. No planets, no debris, nothing. Just empty space where solar systems used to be." Sam studied the display. "You think these things have done this before?" "I think they've been doing it for millions of years," Lisa said grimly. "They follow the trade routes, find the most populated systems, and consume everything. Planets, populations, entire ecosystems. Then they move on to the next target." Jake absorbed this information silently. "What about the warnings we sent out?" Danny checked his communications log. "We've received responses from most of the major governments, sir. None of them are taking the threat seriously. The Crystalline Empire thinks we're trying to interfere in their territorial disputes. The Aquatic Federation says their deep space monitors would have detected any real threat long before our scanners could. The Insectoid Collective was the most direct. They told us to focus on our own problems and stop bothering our betters." "Our betters," Jake repeated quietly. "We'll see about that." Lisa returned to her lab to continue monitoring the creatures. She had named them Devourers in her research notes, though she hoped she would never need to use that name in an official report. Every few hours she updated their position and confirmed their heading toward the Zephyrian system. The aliens might not believe humanity's warnings, but Lisa was absolutely certain about what was coming. In 6 days, the Zephyrian Republic would face an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. And they would face it completely unprepared because they had refused to listen to the one species that had seen the danger coming. She only hoped that when the time came, humanity would be ready for what happened next. The Grand Council chamber on Zephyr Prime had not seen this much activity in decades. High Chancellor Vexithara stood at the center of the circular room, her blue skin showing the stress patterns that meant she was deeply troubled. Around her, the most powerful leaders of the Zephyrian Republic argued loudly about the human warning. "Read it again," demanded Defense Minister Koroth, his voice filled with contempt. Chancellor Vexithara activated the holographic display and the human message appeared in the air above them. Captain Sullivan's words echoed through the chamber once more, describing massive biological entities heading toward their system. "Impossible," scoffed General Threx from his seat near the back. "Our sensor networks cover 3 star systems in every direction. If something that large was approaching, we would have detected it weeks ago. The humans are clearly malfunctioning," added Admiral Korth, who had received the original warning. "Their primitive technology probably mistook a solar flare or asteroid field for these imaginary creatures." Minister Koroth stood up, his ceremonial robes flowing dramatically. "My fellow council members, let us not forget who we are dealing with. The human species has barely been in space for 2 centuries. We have been exploring the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Are we really going to panic because some upstart mammals think they see monsters in the dark?" Laughter filled the chamber. Chancellor Vexithara tried to maintain order, but even she was having trouble taking the human warning seriously. The Zephyrian Republic had the most advanced sensor technology in known space. Their detection grids could spot a single ship at the edge of their territory. "What do we know about human sensor capabilities?" she asked her science advisor. "Very basic, Chancellor," replied Dr. Yextil. "They use electromagnetic arrays and simple gravitational sensors. Compared to our quantum resonance detectors, their equipment is like comparing a child's toy to a master craftsman's tool." "Then we are agreed," Chancellor Vexithara announced. "We will send a polite response thanking the humans for their concern, but we will not waste resources on a false alarm." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. In the crystal cities of the Crystalline Empire, Admiral Crystalsong reviewed the human warning with her staff officers. The crystalline beings communicated through harmonic vibrations, and the sounds in the war room were harsh and dismissive. "The humans grow bold," Crystalsong sang in frequencies that translated to annoyance. "First they demand trading rights in our sectors. Now they dare to warn us of imaginary threats." Her tactical officer, Commander Sharpnote, vibrated agreement. Our crystal matrix sensors extend far beyond the range of any biological technology. These supposed creatures would disrupt our harmonic fields long before reaching our territory. Send a response, Crystal Song decided. Tell the humans that their primitive sensors are clearly defective. Suggest they upgrade to proper technology before attempting to advise their superiors again. In the underwater cities of the Aquatic Federation, Ambassador Wave Dancer floated in the central command sphere. Surrounded by streams of bioluminescent data, the aquatic beings had evolved in the deepest oceans of their homeworld and prided themselves on their ability to sense danger through the smallest changes in their environment. The human warning speaks of creatures moving through space, Wave Dancer bubbled to her advisors. But our deep current monitors would detect any disturbance in the cosmic flows long before visual sensors could identify a threat, perhaps. The humans mean well, suggested Counselor Tide Turner diplomatically. But their sensory organs evolved for dry land environments. They cannot perceive the subtle currents that reveal true danger. Draft a polite response, Wave Dancer decided. Thank them for their concern, but assure them that the deep current monitors show only normal space weather patterns in all directions. The most insulting response came from the Insectoid Collective. Queen Mind Zaxth processed the human warning through the shared consciousness of billions of insectoid drones. The collective intelligence reviewed the data in microseconds and reached a unanimous conclusion. The message Queen Mind Zaxth sent back to the New Horizon was brief and cutting. Young species often mistake natural phenomena for threats. Perhaps humans should focus on mastering their own solar system before attempting to advise their betters. The collective has survived for 50,000 years by trusting in superior intellect over primitive fear. On board the New Horizon, Captain Jake Sullivan read each dismissive response with growing frustration. Danny Kim had compiled them all into a single report that painted a clear picture of alien arrogance. They're not even considering the possibility that we might be right, Danny said as he handed Jake the latest message from the Crystalline Empire. Dr. Lisa Martinez entered the bridge carrying her updated analysis of the Devourers. Captain, I've been tracking their movement for the past day. They're still heading directly for the Zephyrian system and their speed is increasing. Increasing? Jake asked. Why would they speed up? I think they can sense the populated worlds ahead of them, Lisa replied grimly. Like predators catching the scent of prey. Lieutenant Sam Parker looked up from his tactical display. Sir, I've been running simulations based on the aliens' standard defense protocols. None of their conventional weapons would be effective against creatures this size. Energy weapons would just be absorbed by their biological mass. Jake studied the star charts showing the Devourer's approach path. What about evacuation? Even if the aliens won't listen to our warnings, surely they have emergency protocols. That's the problem, Lisa said. The Zephyrian Republic has over 12 billion people spread across 15 worlds. Even with their entire merchant fleet, it would take months to evacuate everyone. And they would need weeks of advance notice to even begin the process. Which they won't get because they refuse to believe us, Jake concluded bitterly. Danny's communication console chimed with an incoming message. He read it quickly and his face went pale. Captain, this is from the Zephyrian Science Academy. They're threatening to file a complaint with the Galactic Trade Council if we continue sending false alarms about non-existent threats. A complaint, Jake repeated slowly. They're more worried about filing paperwork than saving their own people. Dr. Martinez pulled up the long-range sensors one more time. The massive biological signatures were clearly visible, growing stronger by the hour as they approached the outer edge of Zephyrian space. Captain, I've sent them everything I have, she said desperately. Detailed biological analysis, movement patterns, energy signatures, historical data about empty star systems. I even included video simulations showing what these creatures might do to a populated planet. None of it matters to them. Because we're just humans, Sam said angrily. The youngest species in known space trying to warn our elders about the boogeyman. Jake walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, creatures the size of moons were approaching a system full of people who had no idea what was coming. How long until they reached the outer colonies? He asked. 4 days and 18 hours, Lisa replied without checking her instruments. She had been counting down every minute. And there's nothing we can do to stop them? Not with one research vessel, Sam admitted. Even if we had the entire human fleet, I don't think we could make a difference. These things are just too big. Jake made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Set course for the edge of the Zephyrian system. Maximum safe distance from the projected encounter zone. Sir? Danny asked uncertainly. We're going to watch, Jake said quietly. We're going to record everything that happens. And when it's over, we're going to make sure the rest of the galaxy knows exactly what the price of arrogance really is. The New Horizon changed course and headed toward the Zephyrian system. Behind them, the Devourers continued their steady approach toward 12 billion people who refused to believe they were in danger. The New Horizon maintained position at the very edge of the Zephyrian system, far enough away to avoid detection, but close enough for their sensors to record what was about to happen. Captain Jake Sullivan had ordered the ship to silent running mode, with only essential systems active. They were observers now, witnesses to something that should never have been allowed to happen. Dr. Lisa Martinez sat at her workstation, monitoring the long-range sensors with growing dread. The Devourers had reached the outer edge of Zephyrian space exactly when she had predicted. The massive biological signatures filled her screen like a plague of darkness moving through the stars. Captain, she called softly. They're here. Jake moved to stand behind her chair, studying the sensor readings. The creatures were even larger up close than they had appeared from a distance. Each devourer was roughly spherical, with a surface that seemed to pulse and writhe like living tissue. Bioluminescent patterns ran across their hulls in waves, creating an almost hypnotic display of light and shadow. How many? Jake asked. Lisa counted the individual signatures on her screen. 47 distinct entities, sir. The largest one is almost 3 times the size of Zephyr Prime's moon. Lieutenant Sam Parker monitored the tactical displays from his station. Captain, the Zephyrian Defense Force is responding. I count 12 patrol cruisers moving to intercept. On the communication channels, Danny Kim listened to the frantic chatter between Zephyrian ships. The alien voices were filled with confusion and disbelief, as their sensors finally registered what the humans had been trying to warn them about for days. This is Admiral. Korth to all units, came the transmission. Unknown biological entities have entered our space. Weapons free, engage at maximum range. Jake shook his head sadly. They still don't understand what they're facing. The Zephyrian patrol ships opened fire with their standard energy weapons. Brilliant beams of coherent light lanced across space toward the approaching Devourers. The weapons struck their targets directly, creating spectacular explosions of light against the creatures' organic hulls. For a moment, it seemed like the attacks might be working. The Devourers slowed their advance, and several of them showed visible damage where the energy beams had hit. But then something horrible happened. My God, whispered Dr. Martinez, staring at her biological sensors. They're absorbing the energy. The damaged areas on the Devourers' hulls began to glow brighter. The creatures' bioluminescent patterns shifted and intensified as they converted the weapon energy into fuel for their own biological processes. Within minutes, the damage was completely healed and the creatures were actually larger than before. All ships increase firepower, Admiral Korth commanded. Concentrate fire on the lead entity. The Zephyrian cruisers unleashed everything they had. Quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, and particle beam arrays all focused their fire on the largest devourer. The creature's hull blazed with absorbed energy as weapon after weapon struck home. But instead of being destroyed, the devourer began to change. Its surface rippled and expanded as it fed on the incoming energy. Tendrils of living tissue emerged from its bulk, reaching out toward the attacking ships like the arms of some cosmic octopus. Warning! Warning! Came a panicked transmission from one of the patrol cruisers. The entity is extending some kind of appendages. They're moving fast, repeat, moving very fast. The first Zephyrian ship disappeared in seconds. One moment it was firing its weapons at full power, the next it was gone, completely enveloped by one of the creature's tendrils. The ship's energy signature vanished from the tactical displays as if it had never existed. What happened to Cruiser 7? Admiral Korth demanded. Sir, it's been absorbed, came the terrified reply. The creature just swallowed it whole. More tendrils reached out from the Devourers, moving with impossible speed through the vacuum of space. The remaining Zephyrian ships tried to retreat, but they were no match for creatures that could extend parts of themselves across thousands of kilometers. One by one, the patrol cruisers were caught and consumed. Their crews had just enough time to send final distress calls before disappearing into the creature's organic mass. Within an hour, The entire Zephyrian Defense Force patrol was gone. The Devourers continued their advance toward the inner system, where billions of people still had no idea what was coming. "Captain," Danny said quietly, "I'm losing all communication signals from the outer colonies." Jake looked at the system display. 3 agricultural worlds in the outer system had gone completely silent. Their orbital platforms, communication relays, and defense stations were no longer transmitting. "The creatures reached them," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're feeding." Through their telescopic arrays, the human crew watched in horror as the Devourers surrounded the outer worlds. The creatures didn't attack the planets in any conventional sense. Instead, they extended countless tendrils down to the surface and began to drain everything they touched. "The energy readings are off the charts," Sam reported. "They're not just consuming the population, they're absorbing the entire biosphere. Plants, animals, microorganisms, everything." Dr. Martinez monitored the biological sensors with tears streaming down her face. "They're converting all organic matter into energy and raw materials for reproduction. The planets themselves are being stripped of life down to the molecular level." What made it even more horrifying was the speed. Worlds that had been home to millions of people for thousands of years were reduced to barren rock in a matter of hours. The Devourers grew visibly larger as they fed, their bioluminescent patterns becoming brighter and more. Complex emergency broadcasts from Zephyr Prime filled the communication channels as the government finally realized the scope of the threat they faced. "This is Chancellor Vexithera. To all colonial governments," came the desperate transmission. "Immediate evacuation of all civilian populations. Priority Alpha emergency protocols are now in effect." But it was far too late. The Devourers had already consumed the outer colonies and were moving toward the more heavily populated inner worlds. Their numbers had grown as well. Several of the creatures had divided during feeding, creating offspring that were almost as large as their parents. 63 entities now, Lisa reported. They're reproducing as they feed. The next target was the industrial world of Keftar, home to over 2 billion Zephyrians. The planet's orbital defenses opened fire as soon as the Devourers came within range. Massive defense platforms unleashed torrents of energy that would have vaporized entire fleets of conventional ships. The Devourers absorbed it all. The energy weapons only made them stronger and more aggressive. Within hours, Keftar was as dead and lifeless as the outer colonies. "Captain," Sam said grimly, "at this rate they'll reach Zephyr Prime in 36 hours. Zephyr Prime was the heart of the Zephyrian Republic, home to over 4 billion people and the center of their civilization. If it fell, the entire Republic would collapse." Desperate transmissions came from Zephyrian ships throughout the system as they tried to evacuate as many people as possible. But their cargo vessels could only hold thousands at a time, while billions needed to escape. "We have to do something," Danny said suddenly. "We can't just sit here and watch an entire civilization die." "What can we do?" Jake asked bitterly. "We tried to warn them. They wouldn't listen." "But we have to try something," Danny insisted. "Send another message. Tell them what we've learned about these creatures." Jake nodded to Lisa, who opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian government. "This is Dr. Lisa Martinez of the human vessel New Horizon. We are monitoring the entities attacking your system. Based on our observations, these creatures absorb energy-based weapons and convert them into biological mass. Conventional military tactics will not work against them." The response came back immediately. "Dr. Martinez, this is Chancellor Vexithera. We should have listened to your warnings. Can you help us? Do you know how to stop these things?" Lisa looked at Captain Sullivan, who nodded for her to continue. "Chancellor, we don't have enough data yet to determine their weaknesses. But we are recording everything. If we survive this, we will find a way to fight them." "If we survive," the Chancellor repeated hollowly. "Dr. Martinez, the human government will have our eternal gratitude if you can find a way to save even a fraction of our people." The channel went silent as another world fell to the Devourers. The massive creatures continued their steady advance toward the heart of the Zephyrian Republic, growing larger and more numerous with each planet they consumed. Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the death of a civilization that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They had been too proud to listen to humanity's warning, and now they were paying the ultimate price for their arrogance. The news of the Zephyrian Republic's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the last transmission from Zephyr Prime going silent, every major civilization had received reports of the catastrophe. But instead of heeding the warnings that had proven so tragically accurate, most alien governments chose to believe that humanity was somehow responsible. Captain Jake Sullivan sat in his ready room aboard the New Horizon, listening to the increasingly hostile communications from the other alien powers. The ship had moved to a safe distance from the dead Zephyrian system and was now tracking the Devourers as they headed toward their next target. "Captain," Danny Kim called from the bridge. "Incoming priority transmission from the Crystalline Empire." Jake made his way to the bridge where the main screen showed Admiral Crystalsong, her crystalline form glittering with angry red patterns, the harmonic frequencies of her voice translated into barely controlled rage. "Human vessel New Horizon," she sang in harsh tones. "The Crystalline Empire holds your species responsible for the attack on the Zephyrian Republic. You will surrender immediately for questioning about your involvement in this unprovoked assault." Dr. Lisa Martinez looked up from her sensor readings in disbelief. "They think we caused this?" "Admiral Crystalsong," Jake replied calmly. "The human government had no involvement in the destruction of the Zephyrian system. We tried to warn them about these biological entities days before the attack began. Our warnings were ignored." "Lies," Crystalsong sang back. "These creatures appeared immediately after your warnings were sent. The timing is too convenient to be coincidence. You will submit to Imperial justice or face the consequences." Jake closed the communication channel and turned to his crew. "They're going to blame us for everything that's about to happen." Lieutenant Sam Parker was monitoring the Devourers' movement through space. "Captain, the creatures are heading directly for the Crystalline Empire's core systems. They'll reach the outer mining colonies in 4 days. "Send them everything we have," Jake ordered. "All our sensor data, our analysis of the creature's behavior, tactical recommendations, everything." "Sir," Danny replied, "I've been sending updates to all the major governments for the past 2 days. None of them are listening. The Crystalline Empire just threatened to destroy us if we enter their space. The Aquatic Federation claims we're spreading panic with false information. The Insectoid Collective won't even acknowledge our transmissions." Dr. Martinez turned from her workstation with a grim expression. "Captain, I've been analyzing the creatures' reproduction patterns. Each time they consume a populated system, their numbers increase by roughly 30%. If they take the Crystalline Empire's 15 core worlds, we could be looking at over 200 individual Devourers." The scale of the catastrophe was becoming clear. These creatures didn't just destroy civilizations. They used each conquest to fuel their expansion across the galaxy. Every ignored warning meant more death and more Devourers for the next target. 4 days later, the Crystalline Empire's mining colonies began going silent one by one. The Imperial Navy responded exactly as the Zephyrians had, sending patrol fleets to engage the creatures with conventional energy weapons. Jake watched the tactical displays as the same tragedy played out again. The crystalline ship's energy weapons were actually more powerful than the Zephyrian equivalents, creating spectacular light shows as they struck the Devourers' organic hulls. But the creatures absorbed the energy just as easily, growing larger and stronger with each attack. "Admiral Crystalsong to all Imperial forces," came the panicked transmission. "The entities are not responding to our weapons. They appear to be feeding on our energy discharges. Too little, too late. The Devourers had already begun extending their feeding tendrils toward the crystal cities that dotted the mining worlds. The crystalline inhabitants who had evolved in underground cavern systems found their greatest strength became their greatest weakness. The creatures' tendrils followed the tunnel networks directly to population centers, consuming millions of beings in minutes. "This is impossible," Crystalsong sang in frequencies that translated to pure terror. "Our sensors showed nothing until they were already in our system. How could they have approached undetected?" Dr. Martinez shook her head sadly. "Because they don't use technology. They're living creatures that have evolved to be nearly invisible to standard detection systems. Only biological sensors can track them reliably, and most species stopped using those centuries ago. The Crystalline Empire's 15 core worlds fell in just over a week. Trillions of crystalline beings, along with their accumulated knowledge from thousands of years of civilization, were consumed and converted into biological mass for the growing devourer swarm. But even as their empire died around them, many of the surviving Imperial commanders maintained that humanity must somehow be responsible. Admiral Crystal Song's final transmission blamed the human bioweapons for the destruction of her people. The Aquatic Federation was next. Their underwater cities had seemed like they might provide some protection from creatures that operated in space, but the Devourers adapted quickly. Their feeding tendrils proved capable of extending into planetary oceans, draining entire seas to fuel their reproduction. Ambassador Wave Dancer's initial response to the creature's approach was more rational than her predecessors had been. She immediately began evacuating the most vulnerable colonies and established a defensive perimeter around the Federation's core systems. "Human vessel New Horizon," she transmitted. "This is Ambassador Wave Dancer of the Aquatic Federation. We have reviewed your warnings about the biological entities. We acknowledge that you were correct about the threat they represent." Jake felt a moment of hope. "Ambassador, we're transmitting all our tactical data about these creatures. They absorb energy-based weapons and use them to grow stronger. Conventional military tactics will not work." "Understood," Wave Dancer replied. "We are implementing alternative defense strategies based on your recommendations." But even the Aquatic Federation's more flexible approach was not enough. The Devourers had grown enormously since consuming 2 major civilizations. Their numbers had swelled to over 150 individual creatures, many of them now larger than the original swarm that had attacked the Zephyrians. The Federation's bioacoustic weapons, designed to disrupt living tissue through sound waves, had some limited effect. Several Devourers showed visible damage from the attacks, but they adapted within hours. Their organic hulls developed sound-dampening layers that made them immune to further acoustic assault. "They're learning," Dr. Martinez observed grimly. "Each attack teaches them how to defend against that type of weapon." Wave Dancer's final transmission was an apology to humanity. "Dr. Martinez, Captain Sullivan, you tried to warn us all. We should have listened to your species from the beginning. Save yourselves, and perhaps someday you can find a way to avenge us." The Insectoid Collective proved to be the most stubborn of all the major civilizations. Even as the Devourers approached their territory, having consumed 3 galactic powers, Queen Mind Zaxth maintained that the creatures were somehow under human control. "The pattern is obvious," the Queen Mind transmitted to her military commanders. "The humans send warnings, then their biological weapons appear. They are using these creatures to eliminate their rivals and establish dominance over the galaxy." The Collective's response was to prepare for war against humanity while ignoring the actual threat bearing down on their worlds. Insectoid fleets deployed to intercept human vessels instead of establishing defenses against the Devourers. Jake found himself in the impossible position of trying to warn people who were actively hunting his ship. "Queen Mind Zaxth, the creatures approaching your territory are not under human control. They have already destroyed the Zephyrian Republic, the Crystalline Empire, and the Aquatic Federation. You are next on their list." "Human lies will not save you," the Queen Mind replied. "Surrender now, and your death will be quick." It was only when the Devourers reached the Collective's outer worlds that Zaxth finally understood the truth. The creatures ignored the insectoid fleets entirely, focusing instead on consuming the populated planets. No amount of hive-mind coordination could overcome opponents that grew stronger from every attack. The Collective's final stand took place at their fortress world of Kytina Prime. Queen Mind. Zaxth marshaled every ship, every weapon, every warrior the Collective possessed for one last desperate battle. Lieutenant Sam Parker watched the engagement through the New Horizons long-range sensors. "Captain, they're actually doing some damage. The Queen's coordinating attacks from 1,000 different angles simultaneously. For a few hours, it seemed like the Collective's superior numbers and coordination might make a difference. Several smaller Devourers were actually destroyed by focused fire from multiple directions, but the creatures learned and adapted just as they always did. The Queen is ramming her command ship into the largest Devourer," Sam reported with admiration in his voice. "She's trying to detonate her entire fleet at once." The explosion was visible even at their extreme distance, a brief nova as thousands of insectoid vessels self-destructed against the largest creature. The emergency session at Earth Defense Command had been going on for 18 hours straight. Admiral Patricia Cross stood at the head of the war room table, surrounded by the greatest military and scientific minds humanity could gather. The holographic display above them showed the approaching Devourer swarm, now numbering over 300 creatures after consuming 4 major galactic civilizations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Cross said grimly. "We have perhaps 2 weeks before they reach our outer colonies. Every conventional military force in the galaxy has failed against these creatures. We need a completely different approach." Dr. Lisa Martinez sat at the table next to Captain Jake Sullivan, who had been recalled from the New Horizon to share his first-hand observations of the Devourers. She had spent the past month analyzing every piece of data they had collected about the creature's biology and behavior. "Admiral," Lisa said, "I believe I found their weakness." The room fell silent as every person present focused on her words. The weight of humanity's survival rested on whatever she was about to say. "These creatures are purely biological entities," Lisa continued, activating her presentation. "They have no technological defenses because they've never encountered an enemy that could exploit their biological nature. Every species they've faced has tried to fight them with energy weapons and conventional tactics." "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" asked General Ryan Hall of the Mars Defense Corps. Lisa took a deep breath. "Biological warfare. We create a targeted virus, something that attacks their specific cellular structure. It's the one type of weapon they can't simply absorb and adapt to quickly enough." Commander Paula Grant from the asteroid mining stations leaned forward. "How do we know they can't adapt to biological attacks? They've shown remarkable ability to counter every other weapon type." "Because adaptation takes time," Lisa explained. "When they're hit with energy weapons, they can immediately convert that energy into biological mass and healing. But a virus would spread through their entire organism before they could develop immunity. Their size works against them in this case." Admiral Cross studied the biological schematics Lisa had prepared. "How long would it take to develop this weapon?" "I've already started," Lisa admitted. "I've been working on it since we first encountered these creatures. Based on their cellular samples from the Zephyrian system, I can have a prototype ready in 72 hours. The room erupted in discussion as military commanders began planning delivery methods. The challenge was enormous. How do you get close enough to creatures that consume everything they touch? "We can't use conventional ships," pointed out Captain Sullivan. "The Devourers will just absorb them like they did with every other fleet that tried to fight them." Chief Engineer Paula Grant suddenly spoke up. "What about the mining drones? We have thousands of automated probes scattered throughout the asteroid belt. They're small enough to avoid detection, and numerous enough that some would get through even if most were destroyed." "Brilliant," Admiral Cross said immediately. "How quickly can we retrofit them?" "Give me 48 hours, Paula replied. "We'll need to modify their cargo compartments to carry biological payloads instead of mining equipment." Dr. Lisa Martinez worked around the clock to perfect her bioweapon. The virus needed to be aggressive enough to spread rapidly through the Devourer's organic tissue, but specific enough that it would only affect their unique cellular structure. She called it the dissolution virus because of what it did to the creature's cell walls. Meanwhile, every human military installation in the solar system was mobilized. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Thousands of converted mining drones would swarm the approaching Devourers while the main human fleet provided a distraction. The drones were too small and numerous for the creatures to eliminate them all before at least some delivered their viral payloads. "Remember," Lisa briefed the military commanders, "the virus is designed to be highly contagious between Devourers. Once we infect a few of them, it should spread through their entire swarm within hours." Captain Sullivan raised a concern. "What if they adapt faster than we expect? What if the virus doesn't work?" "Then we're all dead," Admiral Cross replied bluntly. "But at least we'll go down fighting instead of begging for mercy like the other civilizations did." The Devourers entered human space exactly when Dr. Martinez had predicted. The creatures had grown even larger during their journey, many of them now approaching the size of small planets. Their bioluminescent patterns were more complex than ever, suggesting increased intelligence and coordination. "All units, this is Admiral Cross," came the transmission to every human ship in the solar system. "Operation Dissolution is now active. All mining drones launch immediately. Fleet units maintain maximum range and provide distraction fire only." Thousands of tiny automated drones swarmed out from asteroid bases, space stations, and hidden depots throughout the solar system. Each one carried a precious cargo of Lisa's bioweapon and had been programmed to target the largest Devourers first. The human fleet opened fire at extreme range, not to cause damage but to draw the creature's attention away from the approaching drone swarm. Energy beams and missile strikes, lit up space as the Devourers moved to intercept what appeared to be another conventional attack. "It's working," reported Commander Hall from the Mars Defense Fleet. "The creatures are focusing on our capital ships. The drones are getting through, but the Devourers were learning." Several of the massive creatures extended tendrils toward the smaller drone swarms, trying to intercept them before they could deliver their payloads. Hundreds of drones were consumed in the first wave of attacks. "We're losing too many drones," Paula Grant reported from the Mining Station Control Center. "Only about 30% are getting through to their targets." "That should be enough," Lisa said, monitoring the biological sensors from Earth's orbital command station. "I'm detecting viral transmission from at least 50 impact sites. The infection should be spreading." At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Devourers continued their approach toward the inner planets, absorbing energy from human weapons just as they had from every previous opponent. But then slowly, changes began to appear in their biological readings. "I'm seeing cellular breakdown in several of the smaller creatures," Lisa reported with growing excitement. "The virus is working." The first Devourer to succumb was one of the medium-sized creatures near the edge of the swarm. Its bioluminescent patterns flickered and went dark as the virus attacked its cellular structure from within. Within minutes, the massive organism began to break apart, its biological mass dissolving into space. "My God, it's spreading," Captain Sullivan observed from his command ship. "Look at the readings from the rest of the swarm." The virus moved through the Devourer swarm like wildfire. The creature's own biological connections, which had made them so effective at coordinating attacks, now became the pathway for their destruction. One by one, the massive organisms began to succumb to the engineered pathogen. Some of the larger Devourers tried to isolate themselves by severing their connections to infected members of the swarm. But it was too late. The virus had already spread too far and was too aggressive to be contained. "Biological readings are going critical throughout the swarm," Dr. Martinez reported. "Cellular collapse is accelerating in all infected organisms." Within 6 hours, the threat that had destroyed 4 galactic civilizations was gone. The space around Earth's solar system was filled with the dissolving remains of the Devourer swarm, their bioluminescent patterns fading to darkness as the virus completed its work. Admiral Cross opened a communication channel to all human forces. "Ladies and gentlemen, Operation Dissolution is complete. The threat has been eliminated." The celebration was brief. Even as humanity savored their victory, reports were coming in from the outer colonies about survivor ships from the destroyed alien civilizations. Refugees were arriving at human space stations, carrying tales of the devastation that had swept across the galaxy. Captain Sullivan found himself in command of the rescue operations. "Set up temporary shelters on every available station," he ordered. "These people have lost everything. The least we can do is offer them sanctuary." Dr. Lisa Martinez was already working on her next project, a comprehensive study of the galaxy to locate any other Devourer swarms that might exist. "We got lucky," she told Admiral Cross during the post-mission briefing. "These creatures have probably been destroying civilizations for millions of years. There might be more of them out there." "Then we'll be ready," the Admiral replied firmly. "We've proven that they can be stopped. Now we need to make sure it never happens again." 6 months later, representatives from the surviving alien governments gathered at a space station in neutral territory. The meeting was humanity's idea, a new galactic council dedicated to mutual defense and early warning systems. Chancellor Threnix, one of the few Zephyrian survivors, spoke for many when he addressed the assembly. "We allowed our pride to blind us to wisdom. Humanity saw what we could not see or would not see. They tried to warn us, and when we wouldn't listen, they found a way to save us all anyway." The Galactic Defense Initiative was established with humanity as the primary threat assessment species.